on the agenda.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Unless otherwise noted, all items on the agenda are subject to action by the board of directors. Time-specific items, if there are any, are noted. And we'll get started with a roll call to determine quorum. So please state your name and here, I guess, for the record. Thank you.
Danielle Muniz, present.
Dave Janetta, present.
John Broderick, present.
Sequoia Falk, present.
Thank you. Very good. It looks full board tonight. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Pursuant to, moving on in the agenda, item number 2, pursuant to AB 361, resolution 22.04, proclaiming a local emergency persists and ratifying a proclamation of such emergency, which allows the continuation of remote teleconference meetings of the Manila Service District Board of Directors for a period of September 20th through October 20th, pursuant to the Brown Act. And with that, we're looking for a discussion or a motion.
I motion we approve the emergency statute.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Sorry, aye.
Thank you. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Next, are there any agenda modifications this evening?
I do have a question, Chris. I don't think, I think in the check disbursement cycle, I'm not sure, the last one I could see was from July 7th. So I didn't really get a chance to see these before, and I'm just wondering what, if it is like the most current or if it's something that should be updated, or what that would mean.
I think we could pull that item from the consent calendar to have a discussion, if that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's do that. So with that, item number 5B, we will have a public hearing on it and remove it from the consent calendar. Thank you, Danielle. With that, otherwise, no other changes to the agenda. Be moving on to public input. This is the public is invited to present petitions, make announcements, or otherwise provide information to the board for matters that are not on the agenda tonight. There will be a time limit of 3 minutes for those comments. Is there anyone in attendance at the meeting that would like to make comments on items not on the agenda? If so, please raise your hand.
I don't know if my phone's unmuting or.
I can hear you.
It's Dendra. I just wanted to remind the board, when you make decisions tonight, that you've already made a committal to financial committal to redoing the meters at a cost to all the district and the ratepayers, plus the wastewater grant did not include the $300,000 that was originally put in it for cleaning the septic tanks, going around and cleaning them and emptying them and transferring that, and that has not been done in a long time. And so that's another large expense that's coming to the district. And I'd just like to know what happened with the income and expense statements and the year end for this year. Why that's not available, and why there's only one day of check disbursements for this month, for August. So, what's happening? with financials. So I addressed that in my letter. I hope everybody got my letter also. Did people get my letter?
Yes.
Yes, your letter was received.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does that conclude your comments on items not on the agenda?
Yes. Well, one other thing, I was looking over the strategic plan, and I noticed that the general manager had written in there that he was working or trying to work with the county, wants to take over Highway 255, something about so we can have turnabouts. And I have never heard that discussed at the board meeting level, that the board even wanted to support that. So, I mean, if the county can't even take care of its main roads, if it's regular roads, I would definitely not be in favor of turning over the highway. Plus, Caltrans has already said there's no way you can put turnarounds. Cheryl, I can't remember what her name is. She's pretty high up. She's an engineer with Caltrans. She came out and she said that the way this road's built and the way it drops off, especially where Dean Avenue comes in, there's no way you could put roundabouts in there. So it seems like a pie in the sky. But I've never heard that addressed by the board. So I'm wondering why the general manager has it in a strategic plan that the board supporting that, or the district is. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. And with that, I will close the public comment on items not on the agenda. Any comments to be addressed, right? You know, we can't take any action on any of the items. So if there's no further discussion, I'll move on. And we're moving on to the consent calendar. And the consent calendar with item B will take to public hearing. That way, the consent calendar tonight consists of item A, draft minutes from the July 19th, 2022 meeting. And I'd be looking to either pull that to public comment or motion to have it remain on the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar with the minutes for the meeting in July.
Great, thank you.
Second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no.
Sorry, I was on mute. I said aye.
Did I? Okay, I thought I heard you. I wasn't sure. Appreciate the clarification. I think we've got 5 yeses, so motion carries 5-0 on that item. And then next we'll look to item 5B, the receiver disbursements for July through August 2022, and including the grant. So I'll go to Chris. Sorry for a staff report on that item.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. To address Danielle, I'm wanting to pull this. I'm looking back through last month's packet because we canceled the regular meeting. I didn't have much to bring to that, but at the July 15th meeting, I brought up to July 15th disbursements. And so this only has August and tonight's packet, as well as the stuff for the big grant. Just as a matter of what I was doing to build this packet, I didn't get all the information out of QuickBooks that I wanted to have for this meeting. So I did it remotely and I grabbed it from Alicia's computer. So I think I'm off by a couple of weeks, but I should have sent you that list of disbursements before the meeting. I'll look back and see if it's in my outbox, or that should have went to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I looked and I don't know, I did my couple of searches were, didn't turn up anything beyond the July 7th. So yeah, if you could. And then I guess my questions, and I don't remember, sorry, it's a big approval, but the Badger meters, did we move forward to go ahead with that project? Because I had thought we had tabled that at the April meeting, but maybe I missed something.
Yeah, we wouldn't have bought those without the board approving that. We did
Okay,
approve that project and we're
It was approved by the board.
running with it. Yeah.
okay, got it. And that might have been the meeting in the spring where I wasn't there. So, okay. And then also the Keenan, the Hajoka, the supply, can you just tell me what that is, or what, if you want to even just send me like the invoice, in email, that's fine, but.
Yeah, no problem. Those are sewer pumps. That's where we get all of our replacement pumps. So that represents about 5 pumps plus some other stuff. So we've been I mentioned it a little bit in my report that we've done about 4, perhaps 5. I did a 6th pump today. So we're really replacing a lot of effluent pumps, which is kind of a good thing. So that's normally those expenses, but I'll send those invoices to you, Rebecca.
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for letting me pull that to ask these questions.
Of course.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for your questions. I wanted to ask if we could request the detailed billing from GHD on their invoices. So they provide staff hours, and total amount. But as far as tasks completed during that time of those items, I did not see the details attached. So I would appreciate having those included with their invoices if possible.
Okay, this is what we received, and we've had some problems with CNRA having the same issue. So we have to figure out a better way of reporting back to them. I just did a reconciliation for that advance to whatever, $54,000. So Brett's not here tonight. He's at another meeting, but we're talking about changing that up. So we'll have a lot more detail as we move forward with this project.
Great, thank you. Are there any other board member questions for Chris on this item? Seeing none, I will open this up to public comment. Are there any members of the public at tonight's meeting that would like to comment on this reimbursement item? Please raise your hand. And seeing no hand raised, close public comment on this item and look to further discussion from the board or a motion on the item.
I'll make a motion to accept the disbursement cycle as submitted.
Second.
Great, thank you. Motion and second. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
say no. Thank you, Dave. Opposed, say no. Great, motion carries 5-0. And let me get back to my agenda here quickly. Sorry. So we got through to item number 6. And so now we're moving, sorry, I was looking at the wrong agenda. Now I'm looking at the right one. I got through item number 5, the consent calendar. So we're moving on to item number 6, which is the business item. These this is an action item. And the first item on this is regarding Manila CSD board recommendation for a vacancy appointment. I'm going to recuse myself from this item, leave the meeting, and Chris could text when it's good for me to come back in. And with that, I'll turn it over to John. Thank you.
All right. Is this just the general discussion?
Hi, John. Yeah, if you want me to lead into this, and then I'll hand it over to you. What has happened is we didn't have enough people filing for the vacant seats for an election, so we're not going to have an election. And in the first time of my history of working here, the Board of Supervisors would like to make the appointment based on what our board recommends. So we can recommend anybody who we believe is a registered voter and lives within the district boundaries. And that's why Megan recused herself, because I put in my report that she has shown interest in remaining on the board. And this would be Dave Janetta's seat when he is effectively off the board come December 2nd, of the first Friday. And she wanted to recuse herself, so there was to avoid any sense of conflict with that said. So what we're looking for is the board to nominate or make a recommendation for anybody they think would be a good replacement for Dave come December. There will not be an election. And then I'll fill that out and submit it tonight because it's due tomorrow morning. So I want to make sure to get that taken care of. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, John. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess discussion amongst the board.
Yeah, I just want to say that, well, we got a few months. It's been a really great experience, and I've bought a house in Samoa, which is why I will be not running again. And I would also, yeah, I mean, if Megan is interested, you know, I can't think of anybody better. So yeah, I don't know how everybody else feels, but I didn't realize, I guess you would, I can't remember exactly. Maybe Chris can fill us in on this, but I guess she was taking over a seat that also so her term would be over and she was going to have to run again or whatever. But since not enough people registered, then we can put her name forward. And yeah, I can't think of anybody better.
Yeah, the specific procedural hiccup that happened with her, she was going to file for the last seat, which yours was vacated, but she wasn't able to be present, and they have a strict rule that you have to actually be physically present to sign up. So she slipped out of that.
So just so I understand correctly, Megan would have gone and registered to just renew her current seat. But because she wasn't able to do that, this is a way that she could potentially basically stay on the board, would be to take Dave's seat, but we will still have one vacant seat that needs to be filled.
No, this will solve the board for 5 seats now. It'll be fully resolved. A kind of a quick way of looking at it might be a little bit backwards, but if say Dave resigned tonight and this board appointed Dendra to the board, then Dendra would have to run for Dave's seat in November, because it's really close to November as it is. So the timing is a little bit bizarre, but generally, because Dave didn't file for his seat again, it won't go to election. And if we appoint anybody to that seat, they will have it for the duration of the 2 years that's left in Dave's seat. So we will have, go ahead.
The confusion is just how there will be a full board, unless my math is wrong, but I'm just thinking if we have Danielle.
Oh, because your seat, Sequoia, is still yours for another 2 years. John and Danielle did file. And we have a new member named Tracy Woods who also filed. So she's not.
Okay, that's the missing link. Okay, Tracy Woods. Okay, and she's kind of a shoo-in because there was nobody that ran against her.
That's correct.
Okay, now it all makes sense.
Yes.
I fully support Meg Ryan being on the board. Absolutely.
I agree. I think she had, you know, every intent to run. And due to the, you know, election office declaring that, you know, kind of changing the rules where people can't file electronically anymore, where they could, you know, in the last couple of years, that was the technicality, I think, that prevented her from doing her due diligence. And so I would be happy to see her continue with this board.
I'm in complete agreement. I think Megan does a wonderful job, and we are better with her here. Does anybody else have any comments? If not, I believe we open this up for public comment. Does anybody anyone in the public want to make a comment? You'll have 3 minutes. I don't know if I can see if someone raises their hand.
There's no hands raised at this point.
Okay. Then I think at this point we would be looking for a motion and a second.
That's correct.
I'll make a motion to appoint Megan Ryan to the vacant seat that will be left by Dave Janetta, who will be missed. But congratulations.
Thank
I'll
you. Second.
that motion.
I don't know.
We're fighting.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Motion passes.
Congratulations on the house, Dave.
Thanks. Yeah,
We will
well,
miss
I wanted to stay in Manila, but despite my prodding every person that I met in Manila to let me know if the house was for sale, this was the closest I could get. So just down the road.
Yeah, you're right next door.
Congratulations, Megan.
Thank you very much.
You will be put into a list of people to be recommended by the Board of Supervisors. I'll submit this evening, and considering that you're the only person on the list, I believe you'll be appointed unless the Board of Supervisors does something. I'll leave that adjective or adverb empty.
Great. Well, thank you. And I really appreciate it, everybody. Oh, sorry. Moving on to our next item, I believe is 6B, and that is consideration of the general manager contract. And with that, I thought we could start perhaps with do you want to give a staff report on this item first, or would you like Danielle and I to take it on and just a brief summary of what's on here?
I could just make a brief framing of this. The board was going to address my employment agreement back in January 2021 when we had 2 or 3 appointments going on. So the board was kind of oscillating at the time with members, and nobody was 100% comfortable with doing performance evaluations and things like that. So we're closing in on 2 years now later on that, and the board created an ad hoc subcommittee of Megan and Danielle, and I've been working with them, and it's been a pleasure. I'm very impressed with this board, and I'm very happy you guys want to keep me around. I think we'll find out in a few minutes. I guess that's kind of how we have arrived here. I think I'm not afraid to say I kind of stuck it to the district a little bit and raised my bar a little bit, wanting to make myself a little firmer here and perhaps to help people that might not agree with that. I think it's setting the platform for maybe a future manager or somebody else down the road that would have a better motivation to come here and help us out as well. So I think it's kind of generally a good thing to do all the way around. And of course, I'm biased because it's me getting a raise. And thank you. I'll pass it off.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Is there anything you'd like to add, Danielle?
Just that I think the process went, really smooth, and the finding or the memo that was shared with the board in closed session sort of helped directed the progress of coming to the term of this contract. The 5-year, I know that's a new term or contract agreement limit. And I think that was just a given because of how long Chris has worked without a contract. I don't know, moving forward, I think maybe keeping it to a 3-year as now that we kind of have a framework for staying on schedule for these performance evaluation and contracts, but that this kind of alleviates we would have had to start this over in January. So to me, this kind of secures that we can move forward. And in saying that, I know a lot of the measures, which in my mind include the strategic plan and goals and the goals and objectives. This is a perfect time to revisit and kind of update those documents as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Danielle. And I would concur with those statements and wanted to recognize that, as we did earlier, that we did receive a letter on this item. Agree with, as I said, I agree with that. And I think some of the additional comments specific to monthly reporting items certainly could be something we can work on to standardize. in response to the comments. Did any board members have any questions?
Yeah, I know we've discussed some of this stuff, and I'm not sure what I can and cannot discuss currently, but one thing that came up in some of my research recently is just, and I believe this should be pretty obvious information, but is Chris a CalPERS employee? Is there a CalPERS retirement fund or anything like that? Okay,
No.
so you have no sort of retirement that's funded by the district.
I have my own private efforts,
Okay,
but no, we're one of the very few agencies that doesn't have it. Peninsula CSD doesn't have one either, but they're involved with one that they're paying on an unfunded liability for a fireman, but no.
okay. Well, that's a big relief. I mean, it's it sucks for you, Chris, to be frank, but I just through my research, it sounds like that can be something that leads to being a unsustainable burden on a district, and that combined with wage increases would be challenging. Another question I had, Chris, is I know that you it seems that you presented a budget, and I just want to confirm this. You presented a budget that showed that with the salary proposed, the district would be able to operate with a surplus. I was curious if that would take into account, compensation increases for other staff and whatnot. I would imagine that if we give you a raise, then other staff is going to potentially want to raise, even though that's not our, we aren't responsible for that. But I'm just curious if that's been taken into account in terms of being able to keep things running with a surplus.
Yeah, that's a giant sustainability notion that it's in the back of my head all the time. And when Maggie left us, I spread around half of what she cost to other staff. So some of that's basically covered, at least for another year. I think that your bigger point here is the budget itself. I did not anticipate this for myself in the beginning of the budget, but there is a pad in there. And as we discussed before, some of this is already kind of covered, and it's just retroactively, legally speaking, not so much cash wise. But I think that it would be prudent for us to look at a budget adjustment in a few months. We'll let Tracy get on the board after December and look at some moving some money around in that sense. But I appreciate your sustainability. I'm always going to keep us in the black, and I wouldn't ask for anything from this board or this community that wouldn't be sustainable fiscally. So I think.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just want to make sure that this isn't going to lead to isn't predicted to lead to a rate increase, aside from what would typically be expected. And also, let's see, the last.
If I may, I think, other rate increases for other staff need to come before this board?
I don't think we're responsible for that, or I don't know.
No, the last time other staff was brought to the board, I brought a salary schedule. So we're sticking with that. And if I came to the board with any salary increases for them or big change in hours, that would be a board item specific.
Yeah. So we would see that in the future and would be able to decide at that time.
Yeah, and I don't think you're going to see necessarily a staff revolt because of me. They seem like they're very supportive of this. They're aware of basically what's going on. So if I can briefly mention a rate study, that's something that's coming around the corner that Brett and I are working on. I'm not going to dive too far into it because it's not on the agenda, but it is in my staff report. The regional board wants to see projections out to 2030. So what we're doing tonight helps me place a foothold and a new foundation of how I'm going to describe that to the regional board so that we can get our funds released to get the water project going. So that's it's a good time for all of this to kind of be written down and locked up so we can move on with that. But the rate study itself, no, we don't anticipate going directly to the ratepayers and saying, you guys got to pay another $40 a month or something because of Chris. I certainly wouldn't want to do that. And it's not like I'm going to pull any money out of our existing O&M. We have yet to, in my many years here, had to do hardly any drawdowns out of reserve, and I don't expect we're going to have to do that either. So we've always been operating in the black. And just as a note, I need to dive into, after this meeting, the audit. The fiscal year 2021 audit is completed, and my job of doing the MD&A letter is due on that, and I'll be diving into that. So I'll have a lot more fiscal brain work going on tonight and tomorrow for that, in order to get this rate projection report to the regional board. So there's a lot of stuff running right up to tonight, and tomorrow's going to be a new day with some new numbers. But specifically, we're not going back out to the ratepayers for several years for a rate study and probably an increase. We're looking to the fish farm in Samoa and other things to kind of take the pressure off of Humboldt Bay, which is our biggest expense. So, yeah.
And is there potential, it sounds like, for the potential consolidation of districts with taking on some work from Samoa and whatnot could potentially increase revenue that would help to offset this expense possibly?
Yeah, I've been working behind the scenes stridently and more involved with Samoa. I can report on that a lot more later if anybody had any questions specific to it. But they recently, tonight will be their second hearing, a minute ago actually, of them moving their meetings to Thursdays so that we can participate with them. That's moving forward, but as you can imagine, it's a pretty sensitive issue. There's people down there that have donated a lot of time and volunteered a lot of their life to that project. So I don't want to come in guns a-blazing and just kind of smoke them out and take charge, but there is a potential for revenue there and sharing of resources that I think is a good idea. And nobody I've talked to yet thinks it's a bad idea. The devil's in the details, and we're dealing with a very large personality down there of a personal ownership of the land, and that's kind of a blessing and somewhat of a challenge. So it's a nuanced approach we're going to need to take to that. But to answer your question in my long-winded way, yeah, there's revenue potential there. Yeah.
Okay. And then the last question I have right now is I think that I don't know how much this is relevant specifically to the contract, but this notion that Dendra brought up about an emergency sort of backup plan, whether that's a staff member with the knowledge or some sort of handbook or whatnot. Is that something you could speak to, what the plan is with that moving forward?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I'm actually writing that plan now, and it's going to be huge. It's going to be great. It's going to be the best plan you ever saw. It's kind of a lot like that sewer system management plan I brought to the board a few months ago. I'm writing something based on a template like that. That's from my mouth with my words and Ken's words, and how to run this district if we get nuked and die. And I'm going to bring that to the board probably in a couple of months. It's a narrative, and it speaks English. It's not burying yourselves in a foot thick stack of operation manuals that engineers wrote. It's us writing, how would you guys do this? How would anybody run this place, and what's going on? A little bit of history, but some pictures and valves go this way and this thing goes that way. I don't want to get too deep into it when we start replacing water tanks and things, but I'm leaving those parts open. I am working on something like that she had actually brought up, and it was kind of prompted by some of the, hearing a lot about it made me think of stop complaining about it and just do something about it. So I am writing that, and you should probably see that pretty soon. If anybody wants to jump in and help out with that on a governance level, we'd be more than happy to add some of that, of what it's like for you guys to be part of running this district from behind the camera. Be more than happy.
Just out of curiosity, how much knowledge does Ken have, like in terms of doing the things that you do?
Well, I think that we've talked about this at a staff level a lot, that we're now a three-legged stool where it's very stable, and any one of these legs gets kicked out and we're in trouble. So that being said, if they both left, I would be able to run the district in a frantic, hysterical way until I burned out. And Ken could do the same thing, and he wouldn't have to show up here and try to pull this off with you guys or write budgets. And Alicia would probably be able to do it all by herself. I'll just say that, and maybe you should consider. But no, we're about as small as we can get, and Ken knows enough to keep the water flowing and the sewer moving. I can do the same thing. I just don't want to have to go do that every single day, but I help Ken a lot because I want to keep him happy. It makes our community a better place. I'm basically an administrator with a screwdriver and a hammer too. So it's really hard to say how well it would run with any of us missing. I've been kind of planning on how to get more involved in the finances and making sure that that is propped up a little better, because I'm getting a feeling that that used to be covered differently by a full-time employee. And now that we have a lot of big capital grants and literally millions of dollars are going to start flowing through the district, that we need to step up in that sense. And our audits have reflected some comments to that effect. You're seeing it in the board packets. There's not a lot of financial data that I'd like to pick up and get that far more improved for the board. But otherwise, I think that we're covered pretty well. Ken's a little younger than me, so he can lift heavier things a little bit better. But today, him and I went out as a quick example, and we replaced a failed pump in between a meeting at the park and this meeting, and it took us maybe a half an hour. And that'd be a half a day job a few years ago. So we've got it down to a science. I think if you lost both of us, you'd have to get somebody in from the city that has a license in order to do the reporting to the state, but that's really just taking effluent samples. I'll keep these in mind, Sequoia, as I write that how to run the district manual thing and get that out to everybody, and consider it a feather in our cap as opposed to some kind of a threat to our employment. You know, we want these systems to work. And I think if I could hand that manual to any one of you, you'd be able to at least figure out how to fix that thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, the reason I have all the questions, and that's basically the end of my questions, but I just want to make sure that I know when we had the discussion on this contract and the numbers are big, and I just want to make sure that you're feeling confident that those numbers are, are with taking into consideration what Dinder brought up with the smart meter expenditures, and then if we do need to have other people involved in doing financial stuff or whatnot, like all those numbers, if it all really makes sense. And I know it's not your responsibility just to say yes or no. Of course, we've been doing our diligence to check over that stuff ourselves as well, but I just would like to hear that from you, just to make sure you're feeling confident about it as well.
Well, I'm very confident about where we're headed with all of this. If anything, I'm a little embarrassed that I've let it get to the point that it's gotten for this position. So, yeah, I'm confident. But with that said, every day something new happens. Every day there's a new challenge, and I think that a lot of the product of this position is being able to simply handle change and address it without breaking, and bending to it and breathe into it, move on. And yeah, I'm confident.
Excellent. Well, thank you for answering my questions, Chris. Appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions by the board members?
So I just wrote one quick one. So I mean, this goes back to one of Sequoia's points, and I mean, if there is potentially, we're looking for places to cut, or we've overstretched ourselves, or there's some kind of unforeseen thing. So it says, like, Chris's salary could be considered for reduction for one of the following reasons. One of them is a formally adopted district cost reduction plan. So just on sort of a real Cliff's Notes version, I mean, is that sort of something to put on the agenda, and then we could approve it for the next month, just if worse comes to worse?
You mean if that's basically some boilerplate language I'd left in there for the duration of my employment here. And that is for me to get out of the way. If something happened, water rates from Humboldt Bay went through the roof, and we, for whatever reason, needed to reduce the size of our activities completely, then my contract can be brought back to the board and you guys could cut my salary. Perhaps you want to have some other manager or two managers, or something else to that effect, but that's in there for your protection, to make sure that there's a way to reduce my salary with a formal plan, to reduce costs. Did that address your question good enough there, Dave?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions from board members? Seeing none, I would like to open this item up for public comment. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. You will have 3 minutes to do so.
I would. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. not only the meters and the pumping of the tanks, but also one of the biggest costs the district has is PG&E for the sewer. And I don't know what that is now, but it used to be up to 20, 30,000 a year. And the way PG&E is going, you have no idea what it's going to be next month. So that's a cost that's coming up. And then in 2007, when I was on the board and LACO did a rate study, we asked them to do a study, an additional study on staffing. And we are below, way below what they considered the minimal staffing for water and sewer. And I can send that report to board members so you can read it yourself. And they pointed out the maintenance, and that's, you know, we just don't have the staffing to do the maintenance. I know a bunch of it's getting contracted out now, but and in the last rate study, which is ending soon, there was a 3% increase for salaries built into that. So and one of the things that I am opposed to in this is the retroactive pay increase, because we have no idea what the budget is for this past year, and that's what that money is going to be coming out of. And where is it coming? Water, sewer, you know, he has percentages that he works, and where is it going to come from? And then the 50% for the additional dependent insurance fee, because that's setting a precedent. And I also really don't like the 5-year contract, but I understand why you're doing that. That also sets a precedent. And you know, I don't know if there's a way to put it back in there. You change it to 3 years after this, but those are my concerns, and it's mostly money wise. We're setting ourselves up, and I'm not real happy with the district taking on doing stuff for Samoa when there are other larger agencies that can do that too. I mean, I know we're the neighbors and stuff like that, but we have to get our own house in order before we take on other stuff. And that's one of the big things Joy Dellis used to beat into the board, was not to take on anything else. And this district has downsized to practically nothing. I mean, nothing compared to what it used to be. There were 15 employees when the general manager was hired. There was a recreation program going on, different grants, the Family Resource Center, you know, the community center. There was restoration going on. All of that has stopped. So it's like a cream puff job compared to what it was before with all those grants. I'm sorry to say that, but that's the way I feel, considering what was on the plate before. So I don't know. And I just see so much stuff that needs to get done that's been put off and put off. And I hate to keep seeing the district constantly putting out fires. And, you know, you haven't even seen a study of what the difference in the park has been without, you know, the utility worker. And part of that is because a resident took on paying someone to mow the park. And then eventually the district paid him back for that. And the guy mowed it in 1 day. So, you know, that's just to let you know a little behind the stuff. And, you know, there's things over like the community center, the trail that kids run around. That's a wheelchair accessible trail, but you can't even find the wheelchair accessible part to the marsh overlook because it's so overgrown over there. And that's ridiculous. I'm sorry. And I know another resident that when I took pictures all around, and she was gonna send them to the board of all the stuff that needs to be done, but she didn't. She just doesn't want to get stressed out. And, you know, I get the complaints And I'm the one that gets stressed out and is the board bitch.
Thank you,
But-
Dendra. Does that conclude your comments, or I would ask you to wrap it up because it's been more than 3 minutes?
All right, it's just, I think you were stretching ourselves thin. And
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. And with that, I will close the public comment on the general manager contract item and bring it back to the board for deliberation or a motion. Are there further comments from the board on this item?
I think, in 2026, if we want to extend a contract for a year, we can do that. If we want to offer it for 3, we can do that. I don't think that there's any language in here that says that this is an ongoing contract, which I wondered, because I know there was going to be some language about if this were to happen again, that this contract, the contract was good until replaced, or I don't know, just so we didn't get into the same kind of situation where you were operating without a contract. And also my understanding of the update to the insurance was that this was something we had been operating already, that this isn't a new thing. So am I correct in that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Do you mind if I just make a couple of points for the boards? For some value to you guys, when I hear the word precedent and things like that, this is a contract, and contracts can be renegotiated and changed and torn in half. Also, there's no board can ever bind a new board to anything. So anything that you find that is repulsive from previous governance, we can change those things. We can change policy, and down the road, we can change our own policy, and a new board can undo everything we're going to do tonight. So never feel that we're locking ourselves into anything that's not undoable, because nothing is really permanent. And thank you, Danielle. I appreciate the way you articulated the 5-year versus the 3-year on this, and it keeps us from coming back in a few months and talking about this again. So thank you guys again. And just always remember, we can change everything at any time.
the insurance has never covered an additional person at 100%. It's always been
The public
50%.
comment period has been closed. Thank you. Well, and yes, thank you for the clarification. I agree on the years. The 5 years was specific to cover the time that Chris' contract wasn't covered. I do believe that we're all seeing a lot of information on inflation out there, and retention is also very hard in these days. And so I appreciate the job that Chris does, and for the district's sake, want to keep him happily employed with us. And so I was glad that we were able to come to agreement on the terms of the contract, from what I understand, and look forward to continue working with you, Chris. So I appreciate your effort. I think the board does, and hopefully that is reflected in this contract. With that said, does anyone have anything further to say, or like to make a motion on this item?
I just want to say, from my, short tenure, my 2 years watching Chris operate. I'm not talking about the past or anything else that happened. It seems like an exciting time for Manila. I've seen a lot of things happening. I see a lot of things on the horizon. Local government, in fact, all government, it does kind of run, it's designed to not move fast. And so I appreciate that. And I think that, when I look at the last 2 years and, sort of operating on a sort of shoestring or with a skeleton crew, if you will, I only have right now to look at, and I can't imagine 15 people on the team and where all that money comes from. And, grant funding is not a sustainable way to, employ people, from my understanding. And so it feels to me like Chris is doing the best that he can and has been, and that there are a lot of things, coming in the, near to near future that are great for Manila. And I think he has, to me, it seems like he has the best interest of the district and in mind at all times. And final point is that, yes, when Chris does, or if Chris would ever decide to leave, we also need to think about being, competitive, because, we do need to make sure the district does run, and we want to attract somebody that is confident. But and so I just want to say that I support the contract, and that I appreciate Chris's work. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any further comments on this item or a motion?
I motion to approve the contract.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say no. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And congratulations, Chris. We got that sorted out for you finally.
Thank you very much. I'm going to pull the plug now. Goodbye, everybody.
Moving on from our action items, we have report items. And the first item 7A is if there are any board member reports or updates.
I missed REDAC, so I'm sorry to say I don't have anything to update.
Sure,
It was
no
a busy
problem.
time with the start of the semester, so I've been a little inundated, but plan to be there this month.
Oh, great. I look forward to that update.
I just wanted to say that I finally got a chance to visit the parklet on Vance, and excellent work, Dave. I know you were involved in that, and that was really a huge improvement. And I've been seeing people using it, so quite nice.
Very cool. That's good. Thank you for that update. If there are no other board updates, I will move to 7B, report items, staff report, and that would be general updates from Chris.
Yeah, thank you. The really only thing I wanted to reiterate was the radio meter program. I'm going to start calling them AMR like the manufacturer does. I think it's less upsetting to some people that don't like the radio, but we've got a handful of them in. We decided, Sequoia, to do my street in particular, because not only do I live here, and if they are 6% more accurate, then it's a 6% water increase for me, then that's okay. But we're short a meter. One of our neighbors has a bigger meter than we thought. So we're running into some little things like that. So Shell Drive isn't completely automated yet, but the first two that are in the ground that are in the picture in my report, we're up on Peninsula, kind of by Jewel Street, where there's a new connection for a new house being built behind an existing connection. So those are teed off. As of today, the software, it looks like it's going to work out just fine. And Ken's very excited. We really appreciate the board supporting this project, and we're going gung-ho with it. A little anomaly is that we received 42 meters instead of 36. So we want to keep our business ethics on par and report that they gave us too many meters, unless it was an apology for how long it took them to get them. So these aren't the exact meters we wanted that you see. They're LCDs, but they got them to us a little quicker. They're interchangeable with the other ones, and they have like leak detection and things like that. So it's working out really well. We're able to do half dozen in a day. We could probably do more than that, as long as we don't run into concrete and gophers and things like that. So Ken and I are having fun doing it and chatting about TV shows a lot while we do it. That's really about it. I do have a big meeting next week with the regional board. They're coming out to look at some groundwater monitoring well we have outside of our land application of our effluent. So we'll see how that goes. I think it's because of our wastewater grant that's pending funding. They're going to open up our WDR, our waste discharge requirements permit that we have, and probably update it. Hopefully they'll keep the threat and complexity the same and not mess with our licensing fees. So that shouldn't, we don't see that affecting us today. So otherwise, that's really my report. And thank you guys for your flexibility last month and allowing that meeting to be canceled. And I'll turn it over back to the chair. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Sequoia, I see your hand is up. Do you have a question? Or it could just be raised from the last item.
No, I just had a comment. I was going to say,
Okay.
I almost I mean, this might have to actually be like a agenda item or something, but I like the idea of that Chris did his house first. He's going to be paying the extra, potentially extra rate before anyone else. And I would also be totally open for, you know, at least for myself, for all board members to be next. But just as a public relations tactic to say, look, we all took the potential increase first. But anyways, that's just a thought. I volunteer my meter to be swapped whenever you'd like, Chris.
We'll keep that in mind, and I'll keep that notion in my back pocket if anybody asks. But my meter's right next to a member of the public that's joining us a lot. So I think we'll both be taking that 6% quickly. Her meter, though, is a 1-inch, so we're going to have to delay that one for a little while. It's going to cost a little more. But yeah, we're going to try to definitely keep this program into a logical sequence that takes care of neighborhoods at a time, because Ken's already getting ready to go back out and read meters this month manually. So we're going to try to do these as fast as possible. And briefly, while I have the mic, I left a closed session item on this agenda tonight in case we wanted to go into that. Feel free to cancel that unless anybody had any real need to do it. It's easier to not do it than to add it as needed. So with that, I hope I answered your question, Sequoia. We'll be out there with your more expensive meter maybe tomorrow.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the update. Does anyone have any questions for Chris? Any other questions?
I have a quick one.
Sure.
The 42 meters as a percentage, is that about a quarter of the meters in Manila, or?
That's 12% of the meters. So
12%.
those are in a box sitting in my office. We've installed about 3% so far. It took us literally 1 day or so for Ken and I to get all 12 of these in. So I cut it in half for us to do 6 a day. So we haven't been adding any more yet until we get the software. We needed 10 in the ground to get the software up and running. So that's why we stopped doing it. But we'll put the rest of these 30 some odd that are left will probably be in before Thanksgiving, hopefully. And then we'll be ordering more. But yeah, that 42 is 12% of total.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I just want to make a note for next meeting, because we did approve the contract, that it would be a really good time to bring up the goals and objectives and the strategic plan. And, you know, that can take months of looking at and review and updates. And I think the strategic plan it was slated through December of 22. So it does seem like it's a good opportunity to just make sure that those goals and objectives are aligned with the scope of this contract, or the, you know, in forward thinking. So that could be something we think about next month.
Excellent. I'll add that to next month's agenda, and we'll do a review of the strategic plan as a timely matter. And we can just fold the goals and objectives from that discussion.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, Danielle. And with that, I think then we would not, I don't foresee the need for the closed session item tonight. Does anyone else feel the need for that? Sounds like we'll talk about strategic planning on the goals and objectives next month, so that'll be great. So with that, we will not move to closed session, and therefore no report out is necessary. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting at 7:32 p.m.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Good night.
Have a good evening.
Is